wait a minute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi, Brett.
Please pray with me. Father, we're on the eve of a brand new school year. New teachers, new students, and new support staff members. Help us make this the best school year we've ever had. We are also thankful for the citizens of Ponca City that voted for our bond issues. Our projects have enhanced, improved our buildings, which in turn help our students learn and teachers teach while keeping them safe. Thank you to our Board of Education members for their time and service to the Ponca City Public Schools. Their volunteer efforts assist us in establishing the quality school district which we all strive for our children. Also be with our men and women of the armed forces as they serve, defend, and protect us. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Okay. Now roll call.
Mr. Clark?
Present.
Dr. Kincaid?
Here.
Mr. Newsom?
Here.
Mr. Riley?
Here.
Mrs. Troop?
Present. Okay, next on the agenda is public comments. We always welcome comments from the public. We want the members of the community to be involved, and if they have questions, we welcome their questions. And tonight we have one person that's going to speak to us. It's Mr. Anton Epp, and he wants to talk to us about speech therapy. So, Mr. Epp, would you like to come forward? And you're limited to 3 minutes.
My name is Anton Epp, and I kind of wish this was turned in a way that I could speak not only to you people, but also to the audience. They're here too to hear what is being said. It caught my eye and looked interesting to me as I was looking in the newspaper that there would be someone tonight here talking about a thing called speech therapy. I'm disappointed to find out that that person actually is not here this evening. She may have been interested in some things that I would like to say. And the reason that it caught my eye is that in this country we have killed the art of conversation. Speaking a conversation is like a lost art today. We're already in the third generation of this loss of conversation, and it's been largely the fault of the home. The home where the small child is set on the floor and the TV becomes the babysitter. No speaking or conversation to the child. The young early years, where the child watches TV and the internet and the computer and video games and a cell phone. And it is here at that age where play and verbal actions with other children is lost. Or I see this too. Inability to carry on conversation on the TV news, in business conversations I have, or the spoken word in church. People speak like they have hours worth of things to say, but only 15 minutes to say it. Clarity and pronunciation have suffered under these conditions. Tragically, when I have walked up to some people and said, "Hello," they look at me and say, "Huh?" as though shocked that there is actually a spoken conversation taking place. So these are some things for all of us to think about in our speaking habits. Clarity of speech and good pronunciation of words, and don't be afraid to carry on a conversation. Good evening.
Thank you. Okay. Next thing on our agenda is the presentation of the Children's Internet Protection Act. And Jason, would you like to step forward?
Good evening. Tonight, I have to come talk to you about the Children's Internet Protection Act. We have to do this once a year in order for us to be able to keep our funding for our, through the FCC, which provides us funding for things like internet, network gear, those type of things. What we have to follow is what's called the Child Internet Protection Act, which has been revised about 3 or 4 times throughout the years as technology has changed. But the basic concept of the Child Internet Protection Act is that we make sure that local policy that we have fulfills what our local tenor is basically for how we feel about those type of things. Currently, we use a program called Lightspeed. We have a Lightspeed rocket that is our filtering system. We use that and we differentiate our filtering between teachers, students at the high school, students at East, students at West, elementary students, so that's different based off where they're at and in their level of maturity and how things go. That's really the main thing to get across, is that we don't just have one main block and say this is the way it is for everybody. We have different levels, so we can put people on different groups, different outlets, so that they can go and they can learn. We can help them learn how to be appropriate digital citizens based off the level where they are at, and then if we need to change it, we can change that too if we have issues. But we try to differentiate between different sites, different ages, and those type of things.
Jason, would you explain to the board what happens when maybe there's a site that a teacher or a high school student wants to access, and then they're initially blocked by the software? What is the procedure they have to go through in order to gain access to that site?
As far as teachers and staff, there's a override they can choose, and basically all they do is they go and say, no, I think this is an okay site, and they retype in their username and password they do when they normally log onto the system, and that allows them to override and get to that site. And then when they do that, that sends a message basically to us saying, hey, this is a particular site that they think needs to be done. What we typically do is we'll take those, we share those sites with usually Barbara and Terry based off curriculum, make sure those are curriculum needs that are actually needed, and then we'll either change our filtering based off that, or we won't, depending on what their information is. If students are blocked from something specifically because their filters they don't have an override option for students, then the teacher will say, hey, I'm trying to take my kids to XYZ and show them this stuff next week, and I noticed that students can't log on to this. Is there a way for us to get this unblocked? We do the same thing, and we go through the process, and then we'll get them set up so they can change it. The one difference between students and teachers is that students are filtered at home as well. We have to filter them at home, keep them from doing things. Filtering is not perfect in any way, shape, or form, just like anything else. But it has helped us in the past. There's probably at least 3 episodes every year where we'll find something in filtering that is worrisome about a certain student or something that they're saying or looking at, and then we can go and we can, get a hold of that student's teachers, that student's principals, stuff like that, and let them go and say, hey, we know kid X was looking at, little Johnny was looking at this, and he's doing a whole lot of research on, suicide or whatever, those kind of things. And that way they kind of have a chance to go intervene and make sure it's not something, if they're writing a report on it, it's one thing. If they're doing other things, it's another thing. So we kind of use those things help us out to show us what they're looking at and where they're going.
Okay, any questions? Thank you. Okay, next thing, discussion topics, the 2016 policy updates. Dr. Pennington.
I'm going to try to go through these quickly. I know you had opportunities to read through these. I'm going to go in the order in which they would appear in the policy book. The first one I'm going to talk about is Policy 2.1-20, Employee Fundraising. We adopted this policy last year, or at least we thought we did, and this is the one that basically reaffirms what our policy book says, and that is that all fundraisers have to be approved by the Board of Education. If you remember, we had an incident last year where we had some staff, we had a GoFundMe account, and it created a little bit of controversy when a teacher, without permission, established one of these fundraising activities. And so, again, the key to this is paragraph 3, an employee who wishes to conduct fundraising apart from the master schedule. And by that, what we mean are fundraisers that are approved at the beginning of the school year, must obtain prior board approval from the board. The approval may be sought by submitting a request for board consideration to the Executive Director of Finance. And the Executive Director of Finance has full discretion in determining whether to bring a fundraising request before the board. We don't have these happen very often. I mean, the vast majority of our fundraising is done through for activity purposes, for a band trip, an orchestra trip, the football team to raise money, cheerleaders to raise money. This would be an instance where these kind of things come into play is when somebody is raising specific dollars for, they want to buy something for their classroom. And so, anyway, we did this last year. We just couldn't find in our records where the board approved it, so we're bringing it back to you. Next is Policy 2.113.5. This has to do with federal program complaints. A lot of this is just changes in wording, and then some additions to who can file a grievance or what kind of things might cause you to file a grievance. There are some additions that when a grievance is filed, that in the past when a decision had been made by the board after somebody had filed a grievance, that was just mailed to the grievant and the respondent and the person they call a grievance coordinator. Now we have to mail that finding to the General Counsel of the Oklahoma State Department of Education. And then within 5 days, the person that filed the grievance then has a right to file an appeal. I don't know if anybody even remembers when the last time we had anybody file a grievance in this district. Not something that happens a lot for us, but it is something that happens quite a bit across the country in federal programs. And then the final part of that is a policy about the privacy at school. And I've had some questions from staff and some others about this, so I want to go ahead and read this for you. The board expects all actions and activities associated with the school to be conducted within the confines of the law and with the best interests of students and staff in mind. To ensure compliance with state and federal privacy laws, to reduce the risk of stifling the free exchange of ideas, to shield young people from potential embarrassment, and otherwise limit the disruption of the educational environment for students and staff, the district does not permit the audio or visual recording of communications or activities occurring in classrooms, offices, or common areas during the regular school day without prior written consent of a district administrator and upon such terms and conditions deemed appropriate by the district administrator. Any person who believes that the consent has been unreasonably withheld may appeal the decision to the superintendent of schools whose decision will be final. You know, we live in this age today where everybody has a video camera in their hand. And the purpose of this is to allow our students to attend school and do the kind of things students do without being fearful that somebody's always recording what they can do. Obviously, if there's a need for recording to take place, if we have, for example, if we had a student who would be better served if they were able to produce an audio recording of a lesson in class maybe we have a student that's out for an extended illness, and we want to record that classroom activity so that student can watch that at home so they can receive instruction. We can still do that. We're just saying that we don't want anybody in our buildings recording things secretly is really what this all amounts to. Okay. Next is policy 3.2, 3.0, and this is changes in the filing of a grievance for resolving complaints alleging discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. Have a couple of word changes. It used to be that if somebody filed a complaint, it had to be in writing. Now they can make a complaint verbally, and then when they do it when they make a verbal complaint, then all these actions kick in. We used to have a pre-filing procedure that has been eliminated by the changes in law. We have a new statement that says that the coordinator will not delay the investigation of a discrimination complaint even if an outside entity or law enforcement agency is investigating a complaint involving the same facts and allegations. There have been some places across the country where somebody has filed a grievance, but the school district did not act because there was a police investigation going on. And so what the policy says is that doesn't matter anymore. So if somebody's filed a grievance, then we're going to go ahead and conduct our investigation and not wait for the police to finish theirs before we move forward. Then there's some changes about exactly what will be in the report. We have some new language about a hearing and the fact that we're going to keep the grievant and the respondent from personally questioning and cross-examining each other during the hearing process. I guess that can get kind of heated at times, so we'll try to keep that as civil as possible. And then we have some changes about the reporting of any complaints and the responsibility that district employees have to report when they see violations or individuals being discriminated against. And then on 3.2-4, we have some changes involving provisions for service animals. And what this change will say is that all service dogs must be licensed as may be required by the state or local law. That's the change in that one. And then 3.10-1, safety drills. There were changes made in state law on how many safety drills we have to conduct, what language they use to identify safety drills. And so these are changes in our policy to comply with state law. And I think we have one more, and that has to do with 3.2.2.0, wireless telecommunication devices. It's talking about cell phones again, and it goes back to the policy we talked about earlier where we're not going to be recording things unless they've been approved by the district. And basically that it says that that no individual may make any type of secret recordings of others on district property. And then no person may use any type of technology to remotely monitor, listen to, or view actions occurring at school or school activity. So it's this whole idea of, using devices when people are not aware of what you're doing. And then that takes us to 4.270, and this is the Reading Sufficiency Act. And first of all throughout this policy, we used to use the phrase CRT assessments. And so CRT has been crossed out, and now it just says assessment. So even though we don't have official new state assessments yet, it probably means they're not going to be criterion reference tests because we're eliminating any reference to criterion or reference testing. We also are eliminating any reference to the Achieving Classroom Excellence Act, which was a piece of legislation passed during the Henry administration. And let's see, then we also, we have changes made into the third grade reading law. The first part of that paragraph is crossed out. And then it makes a change and tells us that beginning with the 2016-17 school year, students are not eligible for automatic promotion who score an unsatisfactory or limited knowledge on the levels of the reading portion of the third grade assessment. Again, they've crossed out criterion reference use assessment. So the last 2 years, if you scored limited knowledge, that was considered a pass to the third grade. But starting with this year's third graders, they have to score satisfactory. Otherwise, the provisions of the Reading Sufficiency Act apply to them. I would imagine that that will probably be changed this legislative session. I think that is, and there are some changes involving students with disability, and basically we have about 5 or 6 paragraphs that deal with testing accommodations and how we will make accommodations for special education students. That language is being removed from policy because the accommodations are no longer allowed under ESSA. And then finally, we have a new policy that is a directive that we will provide students and families with regular notice of the academic standards required to graduate from the district. We're going to tell them the number and types of credits needed to graduate, minimum enrollment requirements, standardized testing, how does proficiency-based enrollment work, what is concurrent enrollment options. This is stuff we already do. It'll just now become a part of policy because it is now required by state law. 6.4 1.0. There's a lot of red ink on this one, and a lot of stuff is marked out, and all that is related to the new Fair Labor Standards Act. And then when you get to about the 5th page of the document, you can see that all of 6.4 1.0 has been crossed out, has been replaced with a new 6.4 1.0, and that has to do with the new rules involving people who are considered to be hourly employees. And we've already made those changes, so we're already in compliant with the new federal law. Okay. 6.4 4.0, this is a policy that you received last week after the other policies have been sent to you, and it's just our payday schedule. And what it says is because we pay the end of the month, if you may remember that, we pay once a month and we pay the last day of the month, but the December 31st payroll will be the first banking day of January the following year. And we have to do that to make sure that we don't have 13 paychecks within a 12 calendar month time period. So that's, and we also officially, even though we changed it procedurally, we did not change in policy that we were paying the last day of the month to the first day of the month, and this will do that. 7.07-10 has to do with child abuse and how child abuse is to be reported, and what that the idea of failure to protect is separate from the legal definition of abuse. Basically what this says is just kind of reconfirming what we all know as educators, and that is if we suspect abuse, not that we know it with certainty, but if we suspect it, then either abuse or neglect, then our staff has a statutory legal responsibility to report that information to DHS. There's some policy changes in regard to how we use physical restraints with students with disabilities. And we also have some changes in the law involving seclusion of students with disabilities. We have a definition for what it means to have a direct threat. which is new. And then what we have to do, if we do respond to a direct threat, then how we have to respond to that. And then when we get to student behavior, which is policies 7.16, 1.0, we used to say, when we talked about drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, tobacco products, we said, our policy said use and possession, sometimes possession. And so what we've changed now is the new thing we're required to do is that we have to also have the term or claimed possession. So again, it's just kind of taking practice that if we have a student that is claiming that they have possession of a prescription or non-prescription medicine while at school or a school-related function without prior district approval, that fits within the school discipline code. And after an investigation, an administrator could make a decision that there needs to be some type of punishment meted out for that. We also have some changes in what types of school discipline we might use. And we've added to that a school service section that says that school service may be required of students when an administrator believes that it would allow the student to understand the logical consequences of his or her conduct. Examples include, but are not limited to, cleaning after vandalism or littering, helping a teacher after disrupting class, etc. School service will not be utilized to augment the district's workforce in ways which are likely to endanger a student or in a manner which is designed to unduly embarrass a student. It's been common practice for years if a student, we've had cases in the past where students have broken into the high school and, made a mess that we had them come in the next day and clean it up. Now that's a formal part of our discipline policy. We also have some changes involving educational services under Section 504. We have students who are on an IEP, which is an individualized education plan, but it's also possible for a student to have a disability, and an IEP might not be appropriate for them, but a 504 plan might be. And so this specifies exactly what terms apply to a 504 plan and which terms, some terms do not. And then we have some policy changes on new language on our responsibility to identify and locate every qualified child. We have what we call Child Find in IDEA, which requires us as a school district to actually seek out students that have disabilities. I mean, that's a responsibility that we have. And we now have some of those same responsibilities with students on a 504. And we talks about reevaluation and how do you reevaluate a student and what does it mean to be reevaluated and whether or not we have to have parental consent to reevaluate a student. I'm just about done. We have some language marked out about the IEP team, and it goes back again to accommodations for students. So in the testing section of policy, we eliminated the language about accommodations. Now we're eliminating it in the student section of policy. And we have some language that specifies that when we're talking about a child with disability and discipline, especially we're talking about suspending them from school, that it's not just students on a IEP, but it's also students who have a 504 also get that special protection that special education students have. See if there's anything else that I can highlight. And I think that's about it. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I'd have one question, and this is of Gary. I assume since the majority of those is to get us in compliance with either a federal or state law, I assume you've read them and have no problem with any of them.
I don't have any problem with any of these. Yeah, we're being driven by law on most of this.
So,
All right. Number 5 is the superintendent's report, and 5.1 is wind farm TIF.
okay. You may have saw that it's been about a month ago, the Kay County Commissioners were approached by Duke Energy, which is the company that is involved in the wind farm project that if you drive from Ponca City to Blackwell on Highway 11, you've noticed all the wind turbines that just seem like they've sprung up overnight on the north side of Highway 11. Duke has a plan in place to build some additional build another wind farm, really 2 or 3 more wind farms in Kay County over the next several years. 2 years ago, the state legislature removed the wind farms from participating in the Equality Jobs Act, which is a program that if you qualify for, and rules are pretty loose now about who qualifies for that, but if you qualify for the Quality Jobs Program, what happened is that for a 5-year time period, the state of Oklahoma would pay your property taxes for you. Okay, and the idea behind that program was a way to incentivize the creation of jobs throughout the state of Oklahoma. Ponca City has benefited for years from investment in our community and companies have been qualified for that economic incentive. When Dorado Foods came in and purchased the plant, the Tyson plant, they came in and did some renovations and they qualified for quality job money. Some of the improvements that have been made to the refinery have been done as a part of a quality jobs program. So we're familiar with that here, and we think it's a great program. What we like about it is that the business receives some dollars they need in order to help pay for the investment they're making, but school districts aren't hurt by that. We get the money we need to be able to function and operate as a district. The wind turbine industry was taken out of the Quality Jobs Program, and that ends for them, that tax credit ends for them. So for them to get a tax credit that qualifies for quality jobs, they have to have the wind turbines up and operational by December 31st, 2016, which is why the stuff that's happened up north of Highway 11 has seemed to have happened so fast. What Duke is asking for, they've come back and they are now asking the county commissioners to create what they call a tax increment financing district. And so the way a TIF works, and you may have heard of TIFs before and thought about blighted areas. Well, the reality is, at least from my reading and the research I've done, that really about anything can qualify for a TIF. Okay, there's not, at least what I think about blight and what qualifies for TIFs is not the same. And so what the way the TIF works is that a geographical area is identified. It could be that maybe at some future date in Ponca City, somebody would want to designate the old business district. Is that Pine, where kind of looks like used to be the old business district in Ponca City? Mm-hmm. So somebody could come in and they could say, we're going to grant a TIF for this area. And so as anybody that goes in and they make improvements, it could be they're going to build new sidewalks, they're going to build new buildings, they're going to put in new, I mean, you can put about anything into that TIF, any requirements. And so what happens is that when that TIF area is created, then all the taxes, all the property taxes that are generated within that TIF by the improvements that have been made, then that goes into a special fund, all right? And that fund then is controlled by the language of the TIF. It could say that for 5 years, the property taxes that have been assessed against this property are going to go in, are going to be collected, but then we're going to use those TIF dollars to pay for the new water lines that we've put in. Or we're going to use TIF dollars to pay for the construction of new buildings, or the renovation of facilities. So really, within that TIF, you can pay for anything that is associated with that project. Now, what happens with the TIF is that property that is either built new or is renovated, while it's on the tax rolls, it's not reported as tax revenue. So it doesn't affect, from a school district standpoint, it doesn't affect your chargeable revenue, okay? We had a meeting, by we I mean school districts, along with Pioneer Tech. We met with with Vance Johnson and the county treasurer, and then we had a meeting with some representatives from Duke Energy, and then an attorney that is looking into whether or not this project, this next wind farm project, how a TIF might work for that. I don't have any idea what the proposal's going to be or how this is going to work. From a school district standpoint, we have a very minimal financial benefit from the building of this next wind farm project. While it's on the south side of Highway 11, it's not far enough south for it to touch our district. So all these turbines that they're going to build will be in either the Kildare or the Peckham School District, with a little bit, just a little tiny bit, in Blackwell. Now, we do collect some of the property. One of the property taxes that is assessed is what we call the 4 mil levy, and that is a levy that is collected on a countywide basis and is then distributed to school districts based upon their average daily attendance. Since we have, I think, 65% of the students in K County, whatever the 4 mil generates, we collect 65% of that money. So there's some dollars there for us. What concerns me about this, there are a couple of things. The first thing is the fact that the school funding formula is based upon ad valorem dollars. And anytime you exempt something from ad valorem taxes and it doesn't go through the funding, it doesn't add to the funding formula, then it basically, doesn't allow us to grow to keep up with inflation of the cost of schools. But what I think probably bothers me the most, and I don't know if "bother" is the right word because I'm still trying to get my head around it. One of the proposals that I think is going to come out of this in their final presentation is they're going to suggest that if a TIF is done, that some of those dollars that are collected in property taxes come back to the school districts. And kind of the way that I think they're going to look at it is they're going to look and say that if for every dollar of property taxes you collect, 6 cents goes to the state through the funding formula and 4 cents stays local. So I think you're probably going to see something that takes some of that 4 cents and keeps it in K County. One of the proposals floated by the attorney was that rather than that money going to Kildare and Peckham, where the wind farms are located, because of their small enrollment, because they only have combined about 180 students, that instead those dollars would go to Kildare and Blackwell because they have high schools and that's where the money's needed. And it appears to me from the way I read the TIF rules that they can do that. Once that money goes into that TIF, then that TIF governs it, and so it could take those dollars and distribute them anywhere they want to. Obviously,
Penny, I think you meant Newkirk and Blackwell. You said
Newkirk and
Kildare.
Blackwell, I'm sorry,
Okay.
Newkirk and Blackwell. I have, and so a couple of things. First of all, we are the transportation district for Kildare. So what that means is that we're the district that is required by state law to transport all Kildare students. So, you know, my argument would be that since we're the transportation district for Newkirk, or for Kildare, if you're going to take dollars that are generated in the Kildare School District and they're going to go anywhere, they ought to come to Ponca City. And then my other concern is if we are going to redistribute money, then I would, you know, I'm going to advocate that if we're going to do that, that we ought to redistribute it just like we do for mill money and do it on an ADA basis. Obviously, that's because we're the largest school district in the county, and I'm trying to, you know, get us whatever we can do. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think that you know, just from my conversation with Commissioner Johnson, I think he's obviously going to listen. I think that you know, the thing about the wind farms is that they don't generate a lot of jobs, but they potentially generate a lot of income for people who have a turbine on their property. They can generate, I mean, some of the numbers I'm hearing, you know, are thousands of dollars a year for each turbine you have on your property. So they can be a great financial benefit to some people in this county. And, you know, I mean, there's a trickle-down effect of that, of dollars that people have. Some of those dollars will be spent locally, not all of them. So I think the commission's going to have a interesting decision to make. I think whatever we do in K County will set a precedent for the rest of the state. We are the first county that I'm aware of that has been approached by any of the wind farm companies. They already receive substantial tax breaks. This TIF would not be the only tax break they get. They have federal wind credits, and they still get state wind credits that are substantial. If you have been following the news on the state budget, you know that for the last several months we've not collected any state corporate income tax. One reason we haven't collected any state corporate income tax is because of all the money we're paying out because of tax credits. And so I think that's an issue. Before I came into the meeting, I just read an article where they've got an issue in Texas. I forget how many millions of and this is probably not the right word, I'm going to say kilowatts, but how much energy they're producing in Texas now with their wind farms. But they don't have the ability to transmit that energy out of the state of Texas. They had a plan to build this big electrical grid, and it was going to connect Dallas and Houston and San Antonio, and they're basically going to use the wind power to help with their energy needs in Texas. But they've only got about half of it done. And of this power that's going to be created with the wind farms that have been built and will be built, is that power is all going to go out of state. It's not for use here in the state of Oklahoma. So County commissioners are going to have a tough decision. In theory, when the county does a TIF, they're supposed to talk to all the tax-receiving entities. My impression, where I've watched it happen across the state, is usually the decision's made, and then the county or the powers that be go to the school districts and ask them just to join in. I don't know that the way this, depending on how this is structured, I don't know that this board will be asked its opinion. So I would strongly suggest that you kind of look into this, and if you've got an opinion, be sure to share it with Commissioner Johnson. It's unbelievable, the amount of money that it is, that they're saying they're going to generate over the next 25 years with this next phase of windmills is almost $66 million of ad valorem revenue, about $2.6 million a year for the next 25 years. And again, that's, that would be, that's significant money for some small school districts. It would be significant for us if we were going to pick up an extra $2.5 million of revenue over the next 25 years. We'd be pretty happy about that if we had that guaranteed. So there are some big decisions to make, and I just wish we had some school land that was a little closer to Highway 11. So, and that's all I have on that.
Okay. Number 6, the consent calendar. 6.1, agenda with commentary. 6.2, minutes. And 6.3, consent agenda agreements under $10,000. I need a motion to approve the consent calendar. Do I have one?
We talked about those in the Finance Committee, so I'll move that we approve 6, 1, 2, and 3.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Okay. Next on the agenda is 7.1, consideration of and vote to approve or not approve the following district financial reports, A through T.
Motion to approve. Second.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
7.2, consideration of and vote to approve or not approve appointing Betty Johnston as board clerk and Kathy Conrad as deputy clerk. Do I have a motion?
Yes. Make the motion to approve 7.2.
Second.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Is she here tonight?
Yeah.
Betty, right over there.
I know you.
And Kathy's here.
Is Kathy here? Okay.
We got to swear him in.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Oh.
Right, Gary? Have to be sworn in?
Yes, and you've got it down as a new agenda item, but I think if you would like, I can do it right now.
Just do it now.
If you'd like to rise, I'll swear you in. Hold up your right hands. Repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution and the laws
that I will support the Constitution and the laws
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and the laws of the state of Oklahoma,
and the laws of the state of Oklahoma,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
and that I will faithfully discharge,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
the duties of my office
the duties of my office as board clerk.
There's got to be a missing word here. Such time as I am
Such time as I am
clerk or deputy clerk.
clerk.
You are hereby sworn in, and I'd like you to sign a written oath with somebody, whoever has it.
I have those.
Actually, that was 7.3,
Oh, it was?
but since we've already done it,
Oh, okay.
yes. Do we need to have someone make a motion that we need to? Okay. 7.4, consideration of and vote to approve or not approve the following contracts agreements for the 2016-2017 school year. A, agreement with Marquita Pogue with Arbor Health Solutions to provide speech and language services for the 2016-2017 school year. Turn back. B, contract with Younger Homes Electrical Contractors Incorporated to provide electrical services. C, agreement with Frontline Technologies for ASOP subscription. D, agreement with Renaissance Learning for reading and math training. E, memorandum of understanding between Ponca City Public Schools and Pioneer Technical Center for Dropout Recovery Program. That's called the SHARE program. 7.5, consideration of and vote to.
That's a new.
No, okay, we won't do that then. Okay, so those, the first four.
Again, we
Or
talked about
maybe-
those in the finance, so I move that we approve them.
Okay.
Second.
Second?
So is Homes and Younger than, if we don't have electrical people, they're under contract with us, David, or Brett?
We don't have any electrical
Right.
people. So yes, whenever they're agreeing to providing us services for the school year.
Isn't this cheaper than it would be to hire somebody though?
No,
Is there,
no.
But is it limited to $10,000, or is that just a?
No.
That's kind of what we've started at.
Yeah, we don't have any clue.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Just something to start with, and to answer your question, they have their own customers, so we're kind of second. You know, so when we need them, we just have to get them, and then they have to take care of their own as well, so and they have their own rates.
this is not,
Why'd you put
not
it-
better than having our own electrician we can send out.
No, they can't do what we need to when we need to, so.
Why'd you put a
Find
figure
that
on how
electrician.
much?
Huh?
Why'd you put a figure on how much? Why'd you say 10,000?
We had about 9,000 worth last year, so I just added 1,000
Okay.
to it.
I have
Okay.
a motion and second.
Second, okay, vote.
Mrs. Troop,
Aye?
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid, Mr. Newsom.
Aye.
Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Okay, recommended action. 7.5, consideration of and vote to approve or not approve the following change orders. A, change order number 1 from the Washington Elementary restroom remodel to accept project contingency surplus. B, change order number 2 for the administrative office seminar room project to accept project contingency surplus. And those two are together, right? So do I have a motion for A and B on 7.5?
I so move.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded.
Okay. Mr. Clark,
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid,
Aye.
Mr. Newsom.
Aye.
Mr. Riley,
Aye.
Mrs. Troop.
Aye. Recommended action, 7.6, consideration of and vote to approve or not approve a proposed executive session for the following purposes. Do we have?
I don't think, Shelley, do we need to go into executive session for anything? Okay, I don't need one.
Okay. Then we will not vote on that. Okay. Okay, 7.9, vote to approve or not approve recommendations for termination, reassignment, resignation, and employment of personnel.
I'll make a motion to approve 7.9.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, Marvin seconded. Okay,
Mr. Newsom.
Aye.
Mr. Riley.
Aye.
Mrs. Troop.
Aye.
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid.
okay, 7.10, consideration of and vote to approve or not approve the negotiated agreement with the Ponca City Public Schools Association of Classroom Teachers for the 2016-2017 school year pending ratification by the ACT. Do I have a motion?
We're happy that we got it done.
That's what we're waiting for.
Yeah, no, we had a few, just kind of structural changes. The really only thing of any significance would be that we agreed to give a step, and we were very happy to be able to do that. And we also, probably the other big change was that whenever somebody needs a personal day on a Friday, they have to get approval from the superintendent's designee at least 3 days in advance. So they got to talk to Shelley. Fridays are difficult days to get subs, so that's why we're doing that.
That's every Friday?
Mhm.
Any Friday, okay.
What'd you do about subs that are different? David was saying something.
We hired more contract subs than we have in the past, and the other thing that we did is that we didn't just do a all-call for anybody that wants to walk in and sub. We've done sub-training, but we've been specific about who we've targeted to sub for us. We're gonna see if that helps us out, to be a little bit more consistent with the subs that we bring in. Still
Motion to
difficult.
approve.
Okay. Donna made a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Marvin seconded. Okay.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Okay. Next is number 8, new business, and I have one item of new business. It's the agreement with the City of Ponca City to provide ambulance service for high school varsity football games at no cost to the district. From what I understand, they're volunteering to do this. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. The contract was received on 8/8/16 and has been reviewed by Mr. Bracken.
This is varsity games only?
That's what this is for. Brett, do you remember what they do? I think that's all we've had it for quite a while, is an ambulance at a varsity game.
Motion to approve.
We have no trainer now, right?
No, we do not.
Trying to work an agreement with the hospital, though.
You are?
It's been approved. I mean, it's been made motion to approve it. Now I need a second.
Second it.
Okay.
Okay. Mrs. Troop?
Aye.
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Dr. Kincaid?
Aye.
Mr. Newsom?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Number 9, adjournment. Is everybody, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Say aye.
All those in favor?
Just your copy.
Aye.
You did
Okay.
both nights?
Didn't get them all,
I'm
but.
doing Thursday night too.